everybody. I apologize for our late start, but we are here as promised. We were wrapping up some things with our interns and stuff went long, but here we are. Here we are. Well, here I am. Comfort's coming. She'll be here shortly. Welcome to our second director commentary. Comfy's
I am
here.
finally here. Sorry, there's cat stuff all the time. There was a skunk outside, and that's why we're so late.
Well, amongst other things. So, get in here. There she is.
All right,
So,
so
hi.
hello, second director commentary. I am here.
So am I.
Yay!
Still. Yeah, so, do we want to, like, post about it?
I already did.
Oh, sorry.
I'm amazing.
So, we're fine. All right. Well, good deal. And because we're late, in the interest of just getting this ball rolling, we'll get started. And if you have any questions or anything that you want to hear us talk about specifically, then go ahead and let us know.
And hello.
Delos is here. Welcome aboard. Okay.
Here we are, and we did introductions and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, yeah.
I guess people, if you're watching this on our site, or if you're watching this right now, you assume that we're Comfort and Adam.
Right.
Yay,
I mean,
and Tank is here too.
There's only so many people that could be Comfort and Adam.
I
And the ones
suppose
who are
that's true.
on video on the Comfort and Adam channel are probably the ones who are Comfort and Adam.
Yes. All right. So
So let
we've
us
got
begin.
comics. All right.
So we're going to start talking about this issue. Like I said, if you have any questions or things that you want to talk about, or things you'd like to hear more about, just
Go ahead
let
and
us
ask.
know, and we'll go. Oh, very funny, Tank. I'm Adam. She's Comfort. For those of you
What?
who weren't sure.
Well,
Um,
sometimes hard to tell because you never know. We honestly get asked that question.
So let's go. We'll start with our cover. The cover was... Most of our covers, all of our covers really,
All of our covers, 4 uniques.
are based on something else in the illustration, art history kind of work.
Right. And whereas the last cover was based more on movie posters
Yeah.
and stuff, Drew Struzan in particular, this is like what you'd find on paperbacks, like, you know, just little
Really
book
old,
paperbacks.
like 60s modern.
Exactly.
Kind of thing. It's and minimalist movie posters do a lot of this sort of thing too.
True.
We wanted to create a sense of Telepath being the odd one out, and a
Right.
lot of this
One
issue,
thing is not like the other.
yeah, a whole lot of this issue was her sticking out like a sore thumb everywhere she goes. And so the idea of the whole cover being the blue of her suit and then just her details popping out, while everybody else feels the same.
Yeah,
came
all in
together
the
pretty
same
quickly.
like sort of school uniform
Yeah.
and stuff,
Although,
implying the idea of school.
Boy, those 90s haircuts. This is something that's going to come up a lot over the course of this series. Just how fun it is researching and drawing 90s fashion
The
styles.
time we grew up in. Also, I want to point out that this is the first time I got to use Kyle brushes.
Yes,
Kyle Webster.
Kyle Webster brushes. If you do much at all with Photoshop, you should check him out. He has, bar none, the best collections of Photoshop brushes available today, especially in terms of recreating more traditional media digitally.
Tank is saying something here.
Tank remembers our director's audio commentary for the original
Oh,
books.
wow.
Yeah.
Those were really long because we couldn't shut up.
We didn't know we were doing. Hopefully we're getting better.
Hopefully. All right.
Let's move into the book now. So the characters change on the inside cover. We always want to have our collection of cast members.
But as we're moving forward and stuff with the series, so the last issue was sort of redoing what we had before, but it was also really an issue about the inciting incident.
Right, so it's mostly about the cast that were the main characters in 94. Now we're focusing more on the younger characters that are going to be the main cast
Right.
of the book
So,
in general.
whereas the other one was very plot driven, this is very character driven.
But also doing this allows us not to have to reintroduce the names and powers of every character every single issue. It's all up here. So if you see somebody's face and you're like, I wonder who that person is, there you go. Check
It's
out the
very
inside
simple.
cover.
Also,
streamlines
it's
things.
a good thing to note, because I don't think we got to last time, the
Hmm.
difference between unique and typic when we
Yes.
pointed out here on that title page.
Yeah, uniques are people with powers. Typics are people without powers.
The point is that everybody's human.
Right. We didn't want the human mutant thing. The
Right.
are they or aren't they human beings
Nope.
question. is-
Everyone's human, and
resolved.
that's part of civil rights itself. So,
Yeah, there are a lot of fighting Flatsman listed, Tank. We get a lot of people helping
Tank,
us out.
who,
getting-
by the way, is one of our
Is
great
one of our
fighting
flatters.
flatsmen.
There's a lot of people who help us do the flats, the color separations on our book, and we want to credit them because, Lord, do they save us a lot of time. But we use a lot of them because we can't afford to pay, and so if we're asking a person to do 1 or 2 pages of flats for us, it's a lot easier to say, could you just do that in your spare time? As
Versus-
opposed to asking one person to do like 36 pages, that's a big load to have to carry. So
And just to acknowledge, and again, we are on Twitch right now in case you're listening to this elsewhere, and
Yeah.
we're saying hi to Wesley. right
oh,
here.
Winsflea. Winsflea's in. We are having a lovely day and hope that you're doing the same.
And hope you enjoy this commentary.
So let's move into the meat of the issue and get this thing started. So we open back in '94 with a flashback. Most of these issues are going to open with a flashback. In the first set of 7, 8 issues or so,
Mhm.
they'll
Are all
will always be
flashing.
flashing back to 1994, 18th of April, the day that New York fell.
And the last issue we saw telepaths, and now we're seeing
Yeah.
this from Virtue's
Virtue's point of
perspective.
view.
And this story part here really comes from what we had in the original, and it was just one panel. And we wanted to expand on that because we
Yeah.
felt like it was very important to show this destruction rather than just tell a story about the destruction.
This is an entirely new issue, entirely drawn from scratch, as opposed to all of the rest of the director cut issues, which are using a mixture of some percentage of old art and some percentage of new art. This one is entirely new, and what scenes there are in here that were in the original issues back in 2008 have all been either like recontextualized, placed in a different scene or a different setting, or they've just been expanded in some
Right.
significant
But
way.
this, in general, is
This one was
all
expanded.
new. Yeah.
Um,
All right.
And the big reason we wanted to expand this was because of this. We felt like you really had to see what happened to New York to appreciate the amount of devastation that we're talking about. It's a show don't tell situation. We talk about how bad New York was and what a big deal it was, what happened in New York. And we are dealing with the ramifications of this event.
And people continue to refer back to it.
Yeah.
So if you don't see it and you don't experience it,
Yeah.
it's hard to have the emotional connection. Now, very quickly, you wanted to show.
I do actually. This is something that was. I did this image. This was all.
It was
me.
Adam's job whilst I did other
While
things.
Comfort was doing other things, and I
It took
did
a
it.
good deal of time.
It was entirely digitally painted, which I'd never done before to this, certainly to this scale. And when I say entirely digitally painted, let me scale things back here, and I will just walk you through. So you've got the drawing of Virtue, you've got the drawing of the city, and this was just super quickly laid out. Dallas. Many nukes or nuclear equivalents dropped at
Well,
once.
Adam's doing this, so I might say that there was several nuclear attacks. So it wasn't just the one on
Yes,
the
it
UN
was
building.
multiple strikes happening
Right.
simultaneously. So I did this very quick layout in Clip Studio.
Mhm.
I keep wanting to call it Manga Studio and Clip Studio Paint. But this was just my base. Here are the flats. And flats, color separations that we were just talking about, are just a way of separating the different areas of color so that it makes it easier to select those. The tone was painted in, but the tone was really super rough.
Right.
There's not a lot of detail.
It's just
to it.
giving a context for what's going to come next.
What really made it work, I brought in some building faces. These are just textures that I overlaid on top. And then let's see here. Dropped in the sky. Dropped in the water.
Not just the water, but also destroyed some buildings. So you saw some
Yeah.
areas just sort of get flattened.
Yeah. I'll scale all this business back, and I'll just see quickly one layer at a time, all of these things. So I removed whole buildings and made sunken craters. I threw in some layers of smoke because I wanted to know what am I going to see and what am I not going to see.
You
I
can
didn't want
al-
to spend a lot of time on parts of the city that were just going to get covered up in the smoke.
Right. You can also see how Adam was cutting away too on the original drawing and
Yes.
sort of using layer masks and stuff to say what buildings have
Yeah.
had parts of them fall off.
Right. So there's a lot of, if you see here, I actually knocked some buildings over that hadn't been before. So there are the buildings toppling,
Yep. And their
falling
dust.
down, and the dust falling. The fire is originally painted just with white, and then I put a gradient map on top of that adds the color to it. And a gradient map allows you to change the color, but to change it like so that the shadows have a color, the highlights have a color, and here it's going from a deep red up to a bright yellow. So there's a depth and a richness to the color rather than it just being flat red or flat yellow or whatever. Delos points out, looked at photos of Hiroshima, looked at a lot. There was a lot of referencing that went
Yep.
into making this scene.
There's
And
a lot of
then-
reference of just like bombed out areas.
Bombed out
overall.
areas, yeah.
Mhm.
And then I also chalked up Virtue here so that he would be covered in the dust and things. You'll notice that he is hairless and naked. Nothing but his him
Right.
survived this blast. And he had brown hair when this bomb went off, and he has white hair when we see him back in the present. The bomb affected Virtue.
So, anyways, this is all to say, holy cow!
This was a lot of work.
lot of work.
This was many days of work.
And
figuring this
also,
out.
this issue had to get reprinted as well because the
Yes.
first print run of 2000 came
not
out
the
dark.
year 2000. 2000 copies.
2000 copies came out dark, and it was just unacceptably
And if
dark.
this comes out dark, like you can tell really quickly. I'll just do a quick flattening and the levels, and if this prints even a little bit darker,
That was the darkness.
you lose all of the detail. You
Right.
can see none of this. It's a very delicate balancing act to get from, dark but visible to
completely.
utterly lost.
Yep.
So,
All right.
all right. So this was a really proud and terrible moment, and I'm glad that we worked this in. so
Yep,
people can
and
see it.
I appreciate all you flatters too who are here and
Yeah.
understanding the depths
Yeah.
of which those flats were made in.
Yeah, for sure. So now we move on to a nicer scene. Speed and Virtue at Speed's house up in the hills of Madison City, Pennsylvania.
All right. Well, and in the stories, I think we always try and find a way to show contrast. So
Yes.
the contrast of the destruction of New York and then the serenity
Yeah,
of
the
this
peacefulness.
nice little house
Sure.
that's on top of a hillside in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Now, Speed and Virtue are two guys that are like really comfortable with each other. We
Super
wanted
good
them to
friends.
feel like they've got a lot of history. Yeah, really old friends.
Although Speed is younger
Yeah,
than Virtue
well,
by a ways.
By a long ways. Virtue's first appearance as a superhero was 1939. I think he was born in the 1918.
1918 or
18,
something
yeah,
like
1918. So he is much older than Speed is, and he still calls Speed Bobby. He'll always see Speed as a kid. You know those people in your life, maybe your parents, but people who are enough older than you when they first meet you that no matter how old you get, they always kind of see you as a kid. That's sort of the relationship they have. But they're also, Speed and Virtue are the dads of our story.
Yes.
Two different kinds of dads, but they're both very much the dads of the
Right.
story.
They're the adults.
Yeah.
They're the people that, are here to some degree to be mentors and caretakers, even if from afar.
Yeah. Weensflea, grab that issue, man. Follow along. It'll make it fun. I want to briefly note the dog. Snickers the dog, Speed and Kid Quick's dog, is a Basenji. That's the breed. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm sorry, dog fans. But we were looking up a good dog for Kid Quick to have, and we came across this. It's an African hunting dog.
And it's just got so much damned
so much
energy.
And what owners say of Basenjis is they're great dogs. They're super loyal, super loving dogs, but you have to run them every day, multiple times a day. If you don't give them a lot of play and a lot of time to
They
run
will
around,
wreck
go
up
crazy,
the joint.
yeah, they'll take that out on you. So we thought,
Right.
well, that's the perfect dog for a couple parents to get a little girl with super speed that they need to keep occupied. So Basenji is the perfect dog for a hyperactive little super speed girl. Also, running around with the frisbee in his mouth is completely a thing that my parents' dog
This
may use.
house is actually
house is-
based off of Adam's
It's
parents'
based
house.
a lot on. It's not exactly, but it's very close
It's
to my parents'
very
house.
close.
So the idea with Speed and Virtue is they're the last two heroes left that have enough speed, that are fast enough to cover a whole lot of ground in a short
Right.
period of
I
time.
think there's definitely
There's
other people.
big heroes left.
Exactly.
But Speed and Virtue are uniquely gifted with their powers that they can do a lot of stuff. in
And
a
so
day.
they're constantly being brought from thing to thing to thing, and there's only a moment
Yeah.
in between for them to catch their breath, do something else, and then move on to the
enough
next
time
thing.
to have a sip of coffee, throw
Right.
the frisbee a couple times, and then take off again.
I want to point out that in the first panel of this, which is one of my favorite panels, I love the expressions. I love Virtue's expression
Yeah.
especially. But Virtue is holding a cup that's a mug, that's a puff paint mug,
Yep.
that we would like to think is a creation of, tiny little girl Kid Quick, and it says Uncle Jimmy's cup.
Uncle Jimmy's mug.
Right.
Yeah.
Mug. So
Uh,
every time he comes over, he has this mug. That's the mug that Speed gets him.
Yep, and I think that Speed's World's Best Dad mug was probably a gift from Celerity, his wife, and he cherishes it quite a bit. Yeah, I know. It's gonna make you cry now.
I know.
So let's talk a little bit about the major theme of the issue, because every issue that we work on, we want to have some kind of an overriding theme, something the story is about. And this issue is a lot about what these characters need. The main 7 characters that will make up
Right.
our core team throughout the book. There's something that they're missing in their
Right.
lives.
Something that they're searching for.
Yeah.
What's that hole within them that needs to get filled?
Something that being part of this team can
Right.
fill for them.
And in the original version, we didn't really have any of that.
No,
we just
you
had
didn't know.
the inciting incident. We had a little bit with Telepath,
Yeah.
and then we dove right into all of them together.
You
And
didn't
it
know where these kids
right.
came from. And getting some time with them to see what their status quo is before they join the team, I think is going to really help you feel like they're connected to this
Right.
team.
And it's also our job that if we're giving something that they need, this is like for each one of the characters in a small way. When Ariel in Little Mermaid,
Yeah.
sings, is it Another World?
Up there.
No, it's
Up-
not there.
No, I don't remember what the name of the fucking song was.
Part of the part of
that
your world.
Part of
Yep.
your world. Thank you. Good God, I can't believe I was blanking on Part of Your World. Part of Your World. The song in which she lays out what she wants.
Right.
Here's the driving thing that this character needs.
And so, therefore, it's incumbent on the story of Little Mermaid to pay off that concept.
Yeah.
So it's on us that if we set up what all these characters want, that within the overall story, but more importantly, inside of this,
Issue?
not
season?
issue, season is what I was looking for. Season, these 10 issues, that we really pay that off.
Yeah. And to a large extent, the things that they're grappling with here are issues that they're going to be grappling with for quite a while. These are defining themes for these characters. And for Katie, for Kid Quick here, what she needs is to be respected, to be seen as something other than just a cute little kid. She wants to be included. She wants to be out there helping her dad. She feels like she is capable, she is ready, and she is tired of being left behind.
Right. She doesn't want to be just the little girl. She wants to be a part of things.
Yeah.
And so Katie needs to be respected.
Yeah. And thank you, Tank and Delos, for finding Katie adorable. That is, if we had to put together a word cloud of descriptors for Kid Quick, adorable would probably be the biggest word in that cloud.
And I want to also agree here that, we see the best things that, a lot of comics have to offer, and we sort of try and take those things that we love and sort of do a spin on them. So as the X-Men are family, we try and do family, but family inside
in a different sort of way.
Right, in a different way, but family in any story and these big themes in any story is really, really important, whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move forward.
All right. Now we're cutting to an airport.
Right.
With Telepath, Motherboard, and Telepath's sister Conscience, Motherboard's brother Bill.
And we keep with the theme of family, of comfort, of time that these characters have spent together, a history.
Yeah, and we wanted... That history mostly plays it out in the way that characters interact with each other. If you want characters to feel like they have a long, deep, rich history, have them talk in a very familiar and relaxed sort of way. The more easygoing their conversation amongst each other is, the more relaxed they seem with each other, and the more connected they feel to each other.
Right.
We want these four to feel like family. It's two different families, but really they all grew up together.
So it's one family.
One
I always
big
refer to
extended
them
family.
as the League of Seven Kids. We don't necessarily say this family and that family and that family. It's the League of Seven Children.
Yeah. Now, one of the things we're doing here is Bill and Conscience are going to take a teleporter back to Los Angeles rather than an airplane.
Right.
This was our way of pointing out some of the many differences that can happen in a world where superpowers are a part of society instead of a forbidden, scary thing.
And technology is different, but there's also just a reliance on people with powers as a part of functional commerce society.
Yeah, uniques are a
as
resource.
The economy.
And there were moments where we hesitated on using teleportation for transportation because it was a question of, well, how many people are going to have these kinds of powers? But what we worked out was the idea that it doesn't really take that many people. Like if you had a dozen people with some kind of teleportation power, whether it's personal teleportation, they open portals to another space, or even a short distance Nightcrawler style poof-o-matic thing that can cross good distances. If you had a dozen people who could cross serious distance with some ability, you could create a web of teleportation that could cross the world.
And it's likely that it's more than 12 people.
But that's the thing. All you would need is 12 to get started.
Right.
And then if you had just a couple more. So in the entire population of the planet, are there at least a dozen or two people who have some kind of teleportation, portal-related something powers?
And the answer is absolutely.
Sure. The answer is sure.
Right. In our world, we're saying generally that the 10 to 15% of the population is unique. So that's a very large portion of the population.
Yeah.
And within that, how many people might have a similar power of
And these
teleportation.
teleporters probably get paid pretty well.
Yep, probably.
And it's probably a pretty expensive service they offer. But Bill is an entertainment lawyer, and Conscience is a professional stunt girl. They do, and a stunt girl who's a shapeshifter who can probably demand pretty good rates for her services too. So we figure they're doing well for themselves.
Right.
Reminding you here that Conscience is a shapeshifter, and that the form we initially see her in, with the darker skin and the dark hair, is not the form that she prefers to take. Her preferred form, because she's an adopted kid, her preferred form is something more like, that looks more like Telepath and Telepath's parents.
And it's something that she took on while Telepath was in a coma.
Because she wanted to feel more like part of that family. It was a way of connecting.
Even though
with
that family was largely gone.
Especially because the family was largely gone.
And so on her license, just as a little bit there, that she has that she's a teleporter. It says
shapeshifter on the license.
Exactly. So
we try to think of some of these things, the practical side of superpowers in a society, and the little things that might come up. If you can change your shape, what good is a photo ID? So the ID would have to somehow adapt to that and
Right. Probably powers and stuff all
Yeah.
have to be,
Put on the
X-Men
license.
wasn't wrong when they were like, powers should really be registered. And we were like,
to some
yep.
degree they have to be.
Yep.
They just have to be.
So there's a very nice picture. I was very
Yeah.
pleased with the image that, I did the effects on the teleportation. It took me like an evening to get
Yeah.
it done.
To figure out what to do, because
Right.
there's a lot of ways to approach teleportation, and it needs to be obvious what's going on, make
Right.
it look cool.
And this is also here, this scene is explaining why telepath can't just go out and be superhero right away. And what are the consequences when you wake up from a coma in a government facility and go crazy and fight your way out? The
Yeah.
fact that there would be zero consequences is something that I would say is a little hard to
Unlikely.
swallow.
It's unlikely.
Right.
The consequences are light, but she is a minor, and she has shown some instability, and she's just in a coma for 2 years, so they revoked her CAPE license. She cannot legally go out and practice superheroics until she
Right.
comes of age, gets her diploma, gets
This
her
is
high school
hence
diploma,
school.
and retakes the test basically to prove that she can do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where telepath is starting. There's a transition that you ended with here that you
Oh,
really
yep.
like.
I do like my transition here. So I try one of the things, and I always do the first draft of the books, and one of the things within the first drafts I did was every scene I try and have like a connector to the next scene. So whether
Some
it's
sort
a
of
word,
bridge.
whether it's a similar image, something like that, that when you cut to it, it feels like it's a different scene yet a continuation.
Yeah. And here we end with Hong Kong Fooey, and then we cut to Hong Kong
Ha 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 ha.
Fooey.
Wah, wah.
So this is Scout and Ghost, and Scout and Ghost are a lot of fun. There are obvious parallels that you can draw between a certain other Dark Avenger and youthful sidekick duo.
It's hard to say who that might be.
We won't mention them by name, but there are significant differences as well. The biggest difference is what is the goal for Ghost?
And the goal for Ghost is to try and find people who are manipulating the system, doing terrible things, especially moneyed people
Right.
who make the world hard for everybody
Batman
else.
fights crime from the bottom up, going after street level things, and Ghost fights crime from the top down, going after the white collar criminals, the people who manipulate the system on a global scale
Right,
for
who
personal gain in ways that
Actually
damage
affect
lives.
far, 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 far more
The people who are causing the issues that create the bottom level crime. That's where Ghost
Right.
starts. This means a few things. First, it means Ghost is extremely unpopular. Nobody is rooting for Ghost because Ghost is going after the powerful people. And that's why Ghost and Scout have to remain utterly anonymous.
Right.
As far as the world at large is concerned, there is no Ghost.
Right.
Scout isn't even a name that's mentioned, other than certain superhero members of their community. They don't even know that there is Ghost and Scout. It's just Ghost. And Ghost is just this urban legend that is whispered amongst these corporate people. Anytime a business has a bad quarter or something, like, oh, do you think Ghost got him? That sort of thing. Ghost is this terrifying legend and is used sometimes, I think, by companies against each other. Like, if you need to sabotage somebody, you just start a rumor that Ghost was looking into that company, and you can affect stocks that way. It can be a major destabilizing influence. Enter the super security. What we're seeing here are people who represent these massive private security firms that are armed to the teeth with extremely advanced armor and weaponry,
And
specifically to protect corporate interests from Ghost.
All right, so let's move forward. And as we move forward, what you're going to see, not just here on this page as we're going down, but the next page is there's a lot of quick shorthand between Ghost and Scout because
Oh, yeah.
these two characters are an incredibly well-oiled team.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was something we wanted to show. Ghost and Scout are hyper competent. Excuse me. And they know what they're doing. They're extremely good at it. They mostly communicate in tactical shorthand, and they don't need to say or do very much to indicate to each other what the next move should be. So they're extremely good at what they do. So we come now to what Scout needs.
Right, and what Scout needs is honestly friendship.
Yes.
Scout's a
Companionship.
character that feels really alone. And originally in the first like drafts of the story, like we had a super high octane action packed
Yeah.
sequence for them, and it was really cool, but it didn't necessarily get across
Didn't get
the
to the
idea
point.
of Scout's loneliness. And so Scout is lonely and he's desperate for friendship. And it's something that, you know, Ghost notices, Ghost recognizes,
Yeah.
but there's not exactly
Yeah.
anything Ghost can do about
So when
it.
Scout sees the lonely businessman at work all night because he's got no family, no friends, no connections anywhere, he sympathizes with that. And while Ghost eventually realizes what it is that Scout's trying to talk about, Ghost feels bad for the kid, but can't really... The reason Scout needs the team is because Ghost cannot be what Scout needs. You know,
And
it's not the kind of relationship that they're able to have.
It's a simple concept, but it's an important
Yeah.
concept. And let's look at the feed here and
Oh
make
yeah.
sure.
Tank says at least they're not hyper incontinent because that would be
That would be,
horrific. That'd
yep.
be gross. Weensflea, thanks for the compliment on the elevator panel. That was a stroke of inspiration that showed up sort of at the last minute as I was just trying to come up with something to do, and I thought that would be a cool visual to have.
But it does
Just
look
as a way of
fantastic,
framing
yep.
a little panel there, setting a scene. I mean, it's hard to do a wide establishing shot in such a small space, so that does the job pretty well. In the next scene, we're going to school. Oh,
Yay.
the 90s.
So much 90s. Like, we had photos, like class photos.
Oh,
up.
yeah.
And we were looking at those photos the whole time we were drawing this and trying to figure out what people had. Now, honestly, at any point in time, especially in the modern era, most people wear a t-shirt and jeans. And that's basically what people
Yeah,
wear.
that's... I mean, if you can look back all the way even into the
The
60s,
50s.
the 50s, and
Mhm.
a t-shirt and jeans was still fairly standard
Right,
gear.
but you know, beyond t-shirt and jeans, which some of these people in the hallways are going to
gonna
have,
sure.
it's what were the particular things? Like, oh yeah, we wore overalls. Oh yes, turtlenecks
big.
was still a thing.
Katie's baby doll dress over the t-shirt thing is a pretty standard style for
Telepass
her.
little vest she's wearing,
Yeah,
and
the
her
vest.
baggy clothes.
We tried to find some style guides for some of the different characters. Like for Katie, little kid quick there, her style guide, we look at a lot of Cher from Clueless. You want to get a feeling for how these characters look. That grunge look that Kyle has, the super baggy layered flannels on top of ratty old t-shirts.
What
Boy, the 90s.
particularly said the 90s, and we try and pepper that in to make sure that we're always aware that it's the
Right.
time, but we never want to hit you over the
Yes.
head
Because
with the
even
fact that it's
even
the time,
living
right.
in that time, it wasn't being there wasn't like being in the caricature of that time that it sort of becomes when you look back on it.
It's
later.
important that any time that we're portraying in the world of Uniques feels authentic and comfortable and lived in and not forced.
Yeah. Weensflea points out there's a lot of personality in this establishing shot, and that is largely an issue of preventing boredom, because drawing all these extra characters that aren't the main characters takes a lot of time, and they're nobody.
Right.
They're just there for that one panel. So you want to find a way to entertain yourself as an artist so you don't go crazy.
We do every once in a while slip in tiny little hints of Uniques.
Yeah.
There's a little blonde boy with funny ears.
Yes.
the top panel.
Yeah, this little guy here.
Yep.
Yeah, we want there to be other uniques around. There should be
Right.
uniques in the background of a lot
Right.
of panels.
And it's difficult because not every unique is going to have a big physical thing that
Yeah.
you can see.
Right.
As our main cast,
Sure.
for the most part, does not
Right.
have that. But every once in a while, if we can pepper that in, we remind you that that's a certain
Uniques are a
segment of
thing.
the population.
It's a thing. I mean, this is a public school. Kid Quick goes to a public school. When Telepath had to go back to school, she chose to go to a public school. Motherboard's brother goes to a public school. This was a specific choice made by these people, by the parents, by the kids. And the fact that, you know, a known super speed hero can go to a public school should tell you something about how normal superpowers kind of are at this point. Not normal in terms of everybody has them, but normal in terms of you're used to seeing them.
And very quickly, if we can just say how I like how Kid Quick and Kyle interpret school,
Yes.
and how they both are trying to sell or not sell Telepath on that concept of
Well,
school.
Katie's big way of dealing with problems is to largely ignore them and find a way to go with the flow until the problems just sort of work themselves out. And Kyle's way is just like turn your head down and get as bitter as you can to provide yourself some armor to survive. He's the cold shoulder approach. We also, the reason for the school scene, this was something new for this issue, is that we wanted to deal with the concept of truancy, which is not something that most teenage comics ever deal with, which is if you're a minor in America, you're required to go to school until a certain age or until you get your degree, your diploma. And Telepath being underage, Katie, Kyle, they have to go to school. It's a requirement. So here she is. And yet, as we see, she doesn't fit in the least.
And this set of small panels are really a combination of the experience that both Adam and I had. Adam going through public school.
Right, but being far too smart to fit in properly.
Right, and then I had some time in public school, whether it was, you know, driver's ed
Yeah.
or career line tech or
But
like
mostly
going
you
and
were
doing-
homeschooled.
But mostly I was homeschooled, so, you know, I didn't really fit in that situation either. So it's that difficulty of trying to figure out how to square this circle and
Yeah.
for this character to become a part of something she has absolutely no interest in and is on the face of it very frustrated by.
Public school is a series of lessons in shutting up and facing down and just do
Right.
the minimum that you're
Overall, and it's not just I want to poo-poo public school here. This is
no,
school.
I mean, yeah, school in general.
School.
Private schools are just as crappy. Charter schools are no picnic. There is no perfect solution in American education. Anyway, we can't speak to foreign educated. But the point is, if you're somebody who is intelligent, confident, competent, and has not already been socialized into the largely prison-like structure
Right.
that American schools take on, you're going to have a difficult time. This is a character who feels like she shouldn't be here.
And the question is that a real photo on the TV? It is
That
indeed
is-
a doctored and
Yes,
drawn over
drawn
and painted over
yes,
photo.
but it is from Channel 1 News,
Yes.
which we both watched. Well, did you ever see it?
I was aware of
Okay.
Channel 1 News. I saw it like twice
Yeah.
in the growing up.
Um,
I did not know the connection between what's his ass from CNN.
Anderson Cooper. That is
Anderson
a
Soup.
young Anderson
Right.
Cooper on Channel 1 News, which I watched all the time in school because it was piped into the school system.
That's right, Tank.
News
You
for
remember
kids.
Channel 1.
News for Kids.
Thank you,
Starring
90s.
Lisa Ling and Anderson Cooper. And, yep, so she's hearing news about stuff, you know, major crises happening and wishing like hell that she could suit up and do something about it. Go where she could be useful instead of dealing with this crap. And that really ultimately is the point of this scene, is that Telepath feels like I could be useful. I could be doing something and making a difference in this world, and instead
I'm stuck here.
I'm in prison, basically.
as Kyle described it.
As Kyle
earlier.
described it. And we are largely on Team Kyle, I think.
I mean, I think there would be a whole other interesting, different series to write with all the characters
Yeah.
and stuff in high school, and that would
Sure.
also be great. That's not the series we're
Not
writing.
really what we're writing.
But
we wanted to deal with it.
This is
this
our
is
way.
a thing that is happening.
And Katie will always be
She's
in
in
school
school, yeah.
through this.
That's what she's doing. Telepath is going to test out and get
Yeah.
her GED because this is a waste of goddamn time.
Or at least that's what she wants
what
to do.
she wants
That's
to
what
do,
she
yeah.
wants to do. Whether or not that's going to be possible.
The last thing we touch on is the fact that Telepath is a super celebrity at this point. She's the last Scion, the last unique with mental powers, and while we never really dealt with it in the original series, it occurred to us that that would make her internationally famous and extremely important. This is a power set that was thought to be completely lost, and if one of them continues to live, then new Scions might
Right.
show up.
And also a survivor from New York.
A
and
survivor of New York.
also another one of my connectors here.
Yeah.
When I can't totally read, I got to get really
What's
close.
that?
She's saying, I'm looking forward to being able to just get
Dash.
dash dash dash.
Next
Moving
page. The hell out of here, you grabby-handed fucktard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that Singe has a Boston accent, but
No. But it would be funny if he did, but he doesn't. He's
Yeah.
from Detroit.
No, he's from Detroit. So
He sounds
East Michigan.
East Michigan,
He
which
sounds
is
mostly like us.
right.
So
The
if you
non-discernible
can't
accent.
stand the way that we sound, then I'm sorry. That's what Singe mostly sounds like.
Right.
Winsley asks if Kyle has been an inmate before. No, but he's seen them on television. Hope kind of was when she was in a coma. You're correct. And thank you for enjoying Katie's expressions. She is one of the most fun characters to draw in the whole book.
Is Singe Eminem?
No, he's not.
Eminem came after Singe was created as a character,
Yeah.
but one of the inspirations for Singe definitely came from Detroit, and he definitely has a bit
little
of
bit of
that.
that vibe.
Mhm. Yes.
He ain't not Eminem, but he's not exact. No.
No.
No, he is a
Happenstance
He's just
is-
a tough punk kid from the trailer parks around Detroit who bleaches his hair blonde.
Not necessarily trailer parks, but
No.
shit neighborhood.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So this is Quake and Singe. Quake and Singe are kind of our
Robin Hoods.
Robin Hoods. Yeah.
Gutter Robin Hoods, I like that.
They sleep on couches. They hop from city to city, getting by on their charm and their good deeds. They're
Very
kind of
Heroes for hire.
yeah, they're kind of
Yeah.
like heroes for hire in a lot
Yeah.
of ways.
And,
even down to the idea that Quake doesn't think that they should be charging, but like we've got to eat sort of
Yeah.
thing. And what they do, they're doing everything for free. They're not. It's not like
Right.
they're taking money, but when they help people, people then help them. Like, oh, you hungry? Here, this like here where they get food from the bar. Fine. You take care of things for us. You help us out, and in return we help you out. It's a lot of that like communal barter system.
And also we have two characters where one is basically the sensei and one is the student.
yeah, there is a sensei-student thing for sure
Right.
between Quake and
A
Sin.
big and little brother. And
Yeah.
also, definitely big and little brother.
Yeah. Yeah, they're fun characters to write. They're very different personalities, but they go together very well.
They used to be one character.
Yes.
And then they split into two in college.
Yep. When Comfort first created them, it was just Singe. And Singe was a lot like Quake, but had a little bit of Singe's attitude and fire powers. But then she needed a certain kind of character, and so she took some of Singe's personality and made Quake, and then took some other kinds of personality and made Singe a different character. So it became two different people.
Right. But that's why they're such a great duo,
That's why they
because
work
they
so
were
well
one
together.
person at one point.
So the question is, what do they need then?
Right.
They seem to be getting by pretty well.
Right. Well, Quake is a character who's really searching for something,
Yes.
searching for the next,
The next
step.
step.
What do I do now?
Unlike a lot of other characters, maybe only Telepath, possibly Scout, has a very clear idea of who he wants to be, what he wants to do, the kind of change he wants to make in this world. But he's at a point where he's ready to take the next step on that journey. He just doesn't know what that step is.
How to
Or
take it.
how to take it.
Mhm.
Because ultimately they are just two homeless, jobless young guys. Like
And-
Quake is 19, I think.
Right.
Singe is 15.
Yeah.
They're very limited in the impact that they can make.
And speaking of homeless, Singe is a character who's been on the road
Yeah.
for 2 years.
2 years.
We'll see that more in the next issue. But he's a kid who wants a home.
Yeah, that's what he wants. A place, some kind of permanency in his life besides just Quake. Because as we saw with Ghosts, just having one person in your life that you can connect with isn't enough.
Right.
You need that circle of friends. You need more. A life needs more, and that's where Singe is running into. As much as Singe loves the life they have,
Right.
he wants more.
So whereas Scout needs friendship, Singe needs
Singe
a home.
needs a home. This is a scene that was in the original, but we changed the location a little bit.
Right. And a lot of some of the context.
Some
and
of the-
stuff,
sure,
and
sure,
it
sure.
was completely rewritten from
Obviously,
scratch.
Yeah. So we set this in Hope's parents' house, which is unfinished, and you sort of see that, especially on the next page, when we pull out and you get this establishing shot and all these things still in boxes. This was going to be her parents' like their trophy room, but they never got to finish it. They died. The house never got completed. And so the idea of Telepath wanting to put the pieces of her life back together while standing amongst all the trophies and mementos of the old life that never got finished being built in the first place is maybe a little on the nose, but
Sure.
it felt like a really good metaphor for where she's
Let's
at.
scroll back up very
Yeah.
quickly. So, anyways, this is again Virtue as the
father
sort of
figure.
father figure, the
Everybody's
uncle
father figure.
figure,
Yeah.
and these two characters, Virtue. The idea is that Virtue has so much, sadness and shame and guilt over not being able to save these other
yeah.
families, to save her parents, that he
And these
couldn't
were-
bring himself.
These were very
to see
good
her,
friends of
right.
his. These were people who mattered a lot to him. This would be like, Batman or Superman watching Batman and Wonder Woman die and being powerless to stop it. This would be
And then
Captain
yeah.
America watching. I don't know, who does Captain America love though. I don't know, but you get the idea. The point is,
who does he love? That's a good question,
I know.
Comics.
who does he have? Like I don't know. I don't know the relationships.
He's got
well
really
enough in
good
Marvel.
work friends.
He does have very good work friends. But anyway, so Virtue is stepping into this role. Sharon Carter. I mean, maybe
I guess.
sometimes depends
When he
on
feels
your
like
continuity.
it.
She's not what I'd call a permanent part of his life.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, Virtue wants to step into this role, and he feels obligated to Telepath especially. But also, he doesn't want her to fall down that same pit, to make the same mistakes, to live his life, because his life is sad, He's been around for so long. He's watched so many. He's now watched 2 generations of close friends die on the job. And he's had to survive every time. This is the curse of his powers, that he doesn't die and everybody else does. And he doesn't want Telepath to have to go through that.
It's a tragedy. Before we go to the next page, if I could point out Girl Pockets.
Girl Pockets. So Girl Pockets was something we really wanted to keep because we got more comments from readers about loving the line about how small Girl Pockets are and you can't use them for anything. Probably more comments on that than anything else
in the first issue.
People loved it because
it's so true.
and nobody talks about it. This was when we really started hitting on this is what we're doing with Uniques, what we can do that other books aren't doing with superheroes, making them normal people who have normal problems, who go through the
make
same
normal
stuff.
comments.
Yeah, they go through the same crap we do. Telepath has the ability to levitate objects with her mind, but she still can't fit a wallet into her pockets.
All right, move scroll on down here. So, one of the things that we're doing when we did, especially for this issue, and we do sort of for other things, is try and draw something special that is reminiscent of a time gone by.
Yeah.
And so we have a photo on the wall that Virtue's bringing,
Yeah.
taking off, and it's a photo of the old League of
The League
Seven
of Seven.
from the early 80s.
Yeah, 70s and 80s. So, if you can hopefully see my cursor, we've got right here is Telepath's mom and Telepath's dad, and that is little Telepath in her cute little pink dress, toddling around on her little legs.
And
There's
then-
little bitty Motherboard playing with the ball, and Motherboard's mom. There's Speed and Celerity together there, and you can't quite see, but she's got little baby Kid Quick on her shoulder. This is Centurion, who you see briefly in the first issue. He'll be important later. This is the Ambassador, who I don't know that you've seen
Centurion-
at all, but she
no.
will become later.
And
important later.
Centurion will be important later, but he is dead.
He is dead, but the legacy of Centurion becomes important.
And Virtue is there too. If we did not point out Virtue, he's standing by Mentor,
Yeah.
which is Telepath's father.
Sure.
There we go.
I also love like the big Buccaneer gloves on Virtue, like some little
We
touches.
did
that
have
we
to
added.
go through old comic book.
Yeah.
So we looked at a lot of like Legion of Superheroes.
That was a
and stuff
lot
like
of
that.
fun for me.
Yeah.
To take like we started obviously with the modern characters, and then to sort of retroactively create classic costumes for them. That was a lot of fun. But so what does this picture represent?
Right. And this picture represents history
Yeah.
and family and a shared experience that they all had. And also, it's a picture of all these people who've now
Who are
died.
Dead, except for Telepath, Motherboard, Motherboard's mom, and Speed. All these other characters are gone.
Right.
So I think the thing that's most interesting about that picture, at least to me, is that when Telepath looks at that picture, it's a goal. I want to be on the level of these people. I want to have that kind of life. Not necessarily exactly that. She isn't interested in
Right.
being her parents, but I want to get to that level of being that kind of hero. Virtue looks at it and he sees it as a warning, basically.
And much like everything else, Virtue's bringing up this concept of to be in this job will take everything from you. And so
Given enough time.
as writers, it's important for us to say, how does that play into the story for positive or negative?
And Winsley brings up an interesting point. He says, with the New York scene, and by the time you get through this scene, understanding so much of where Virtue came from, he sympathized with Virtue more than Hope. And that's something that happens for a lot of people. I think it's interesting with this book, the way that a lot of our fans can divide almost down age lines, but not exactly, not perfectly, between people who really empathize with and see themselves in league with the more adult heroes and the ones who empathize mostly with the younger heroes and I see themselves in
Right.
that position.
Because right now, older me sympathizes with Virtue.
But I can easily
Right.
put myself back into the shoes of the younger characters, too.
Well, as writers, we have to put ourselves in both those shoes.
Yeah, and I feel like I have been myself on both sides of this Virtue and
Right.
Hope conversation. I've been the one trying to explain something to somebody and being taken wrong. I'm trying to help them out and give good advice, and they're just seeing it as being an insult. I've also been the one who's had somebody giving me advice, and it just sounds like they're condescending to me,
Right.
and I don't have any interest in listening to it because they don't get where I'm coming from,
Right. So anyways, this is the moment here where we're really setting up Telepath and who she is as a character, and the fact that instead of just being somebody who kind of sort of maybe wants to be a hero, being a hero is what she is. That's what she does. She
Right.
doesn't do anything else. That is who she sees herself as, and nothing else will do.
She's not trying to figure out who she is. She knows who she is. She's just trying to figure out how to get people to let her be who she is.
Exactly.
That's it. That's her search. That's her quest.
All right. So
and
let's
along those lines, we come to this fight sequence.
But let's first talk about the first appearance of the TF3.
The Teen Force 3, one of our favorite creations.
I love the Teen
Pop
Force 3.
star superheroes. Because if you're going to have a world where superheroes are normalized and a world where heroes are registered and licensed things, it's just a matter of time before a corporation makes their own. And while this was dealt with a little bit in stories like Watchmen, we wanted to go the full-on pop star route.
Right, and we wanted to go, I think, the fun route.
Like fun celebrity route, as opposed to
Right.
everything's
To-
dark and everything's misery. And
It's too
everybody
easy
is-
to do everything's misery all
Yeah.
over again. So
Every hero is secretly an asshole.
Right.
No, not in Uniques.
Right.
Some of them will be.
some of them
But
will
not
be,
all
but
of
not
them.
all of
It's
them.
not a guarantee.
Right.
So that's the Teen Force Theory. You're going to see a lot more of them
Right.
in the weeks.
And so
issues
what
to
this
come.
overall scene is, though, the scene here we're seeing with Telepath and all this fighting and stuff, and really we
Yeah.
can... you
It's
know,
also
slow down.
comparing and contrasting the
Right, the
bright,
poppy
shiny
fun...
news coverage of
Yeah.
Teen Force 3 with this dirtier, grittier
Right.
crack house fight.
And this crack house fight was the fight that we had in the original opening to issue 1 in the 2008 version. And really, this is us just bringing that back and expanding on it and sort of showing the one-woman show that is Telepath fighting all
Yeah.
these guys.
Yep. Sam is picking up some JT and Cisco in the designs. You're not
What?
wrong. You're
My God.
not wrong.
Huh?
They were a lot of fun to draw.
Special points if you can figure out
If you can,
Gravity.
yeah, if you can figure out Gravity Girl. I'll give you one guess, and if you get that wrong, I'll let you guess Baby one more time. So Telepath's fighting style, we talked about this, I think, some before, but we wanted to do a mixture of things. So she's not just like a mind wizard or something.
Yep.
It's an even mixture of staff fighting, martial arts, and telekinetics. She is a fully rounded combatant.
And she is somebody also, even though she is a telepath and that is her name, she will not use her telepathy to control and coerce other people. It's part of her moral
Yep.
code, and
For-
it's
well,
part of the law.
Exactly. It's two things. Morally, it's wrong, and she won't go there. Not just because of her morals, but because if we're going to be respected by the world at large, we can't let them think that scions are just going to randomly read minds.
Yeah.
Secondly, totally illegal, very illegal
Very,
to just
she's
mind
very
control somebody.
careful. I think there's like certain circumstances in which
Right,
But
where
it
it's
is
okay,
very-
but it's very strict and very,
Very
cautious.
strict.
So you're not going to see telepath using telepathy
All right.
in a combat way.
So
very
let's
often.
scroll down here.
The other
Unless you-
thing,
oh,
very briefly, is
Mhm.
we are trying to show that telepath could use a team. She's clearly really good at what she does, but bullets get past. She takes a hit to her armor. She's not perfect. You can see that she can't watch all of her sides at once, even with Motherboard watching out for her.
Motherboard, who is on that
Who's on
little,
the little mother ball.
hover ball.
Yeah. So yeah, she can get through. She can fight. She can do a lot, but there are limits. She's just one person.
Okay. So anyways, that's the idea, is that, there's only so much she can do, and, this is the back and forth between Telepath and Motherboard, is Motherboard's leading her where she needs to be, because Motherboard
Sure.
is the eye.
The eye in the sky.
Mhm.
And that's what Motherboard's role is largely going to be in the rest of the series. Somebody to watch the things that you can't see when you're right inside of it.
And you, fair readers, may be looking at these characters on the rooftop and
Rilla
saying
and
to
Breaker.
yourself, just some random thugs.
No.
Oh, no!
They will be back.
Yes.
Rilla, by the way, originally I wanted to spell Rilla's name RLA, like the RZA from Wu-Tang, RZA, the RZA, but we decided that nobody would know how to read that.
Yep.
So we spelled it out RILLA. I'm still a little disappointed, but I totally get it. Nobody would have read it properly.
Yeah.
So Rilla, like the gorilla, because she's just a unique girl with gorilla proportions. A beast of a
And
beast.
strength.
And very strong and very
Very
nimble.
strong.
And Breaker, like a circuit breaker, electricity, zap zap. They're good characters.
They're such good characters. I'm so excited.
We're starting to write.
I
them
love
now,
these
actually,
the
for
best
later.
friend characters. I
Yeah.
love them so much.
Yeah. Teamwork. That's what we like to write.
I guess.
Because teamwork.
Yeah.
So now we get to Michael's first appearance. And Michael is seen only briefly. We don't really spell out for him to the same degree that we do the others, but he does come out and say what he wants. And what he wants is to help. Michael is a simple guy. He just wants to help.
Right. And I think we might be expanding at some point on
Absolutely.
this moment
For sure.
to say what else, he wanted at
Yeah.
the time, and, to see how that came into fruition. But right now,
Being
it's
a-
just very simple.
Being a simple guy doesn't mean he's shallow.
No.
There's a lot of depth to this character that's going to come out over time.
Right.
And then Countryman shows up, and I love this scene.
I love this scene
So
so
much.
much. When we were concepting it, we were like, "Oh, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it."
This is one of my favorite scenes of the whole first volume of
And
the series.
again, family and history and the way these two characters
way that he
interact.
messes with her.
Yes.
And the way that she reacts to it, that's so, this was just so much fun.
Right. And the history between these characters, like we've said in the last issue, is that he was the babysitter.
Yeah.
He was the caretaker. And so she grew up with this guy being around half the time.
Yeah. When he was younger than Telepath, being the kid sidekick to the previous Countryman, he would, on the weekends, watch little baby Telepath and her friends. So yeah, they've got this very long history.
And
a very brotherly, I think.
very
relationship.
brotherly. And what he's here to ask her to do is to become a part of the task force. And it's important to note what the task force is it is the major uniques division of the military.
Yes. There's a lot of levels of unique teams in our world. The most basic level is a more informal conglomeration. You still have to register your team in the same way that any law enforcement agency would have to be
Right.
under that structure, but it goes all the way up to a direct federal unit, and the federal unit is the task force. And
So it's a very big deal.
it's a huge deal.
Right.
It's the biggest deal. It's the SEAL Team
Right.
6
Right.
of Super.
And I like the idea that he knew all along that this
that
would
this
be
is what
her
it was for.
reaction.
This was kind of a test.
Right.
She
She would break the rules.
You're
because
gonna break the rules.
Telepath is a rule breaker. She believes in some rules.
She's lawful good with an asterisk. No, she's neutral good.
Okay.
Telepath is neutral good because she absolutely believes in obeying laws, except for the stupid ones.
And if they're stupid,
Yep. If your rules and regulations are gonna stand in the way of me doing a greater good, then I'm gonna have to do what I'm gonna have to do. That's Telepath to a T. When we nail down that I obey the laws that aren't stupid, that
We're
gave
like,
us
"Oh,
a real
perfect. That's her."
core facet of this character. The telepathy scene, reading into the mind. I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit here because there's a lot of good little bits.
are you clicked on them?
I'm trying to. There we go. There's a lot of good little bits in this panel. If you get it digitally, it's a lot easier to scan in here and
But I think you
take
can
a
see
look.
it in the print
There are
as well.
some previews of some events yet to come. There's an overview of who the task force is, some of these other characters. There's this little shot here, and if you can see my cursor, this little shot here is.
Can we zoom in at all anymore?
Well, we can get a little closer. It's going to start getting blurry, but.
I'm sure people will have.
This little panel here is a little motherboard, little telepath, and teenage Sean Redman Countryman when he's babysitting her and they teaming up and beating him up and stuff. Just that little moment is so important. It's all these. Uniques is a collection of little moments. There's the big story, yes, but it's these small touches, the little asides that add the humanity, that add the depth, that add all those extra layers of realism and humanity.
They're the scenes that make the moments worth it.
Yeah. You see things like Manifest Destiny, who's a robot, so you see the overlay of the robo-skeleton over top of his face.
You see Countryman
reaching
hand
out. Yeah.
Which is an homage, by the way, to Darth Vader reaching his hand out in
Yes.
that.
If you ever are fortunate enough to get the manga edition of Empire Strikes Back,
Which Dark Horse released
Dark
years
Horse
ago.
released back in the early aughts, it is superb, And there is the in the Luke, I'm your father scene, there is a moment with Vader reaching his hand out, and that is where we got this panel. Archer, Paul Revere, and Faith, Agent One here. You're going to see a lot more of these characters later.
Oh, so much more. And we're working on issue 7. So excited.
We're 8. Issue 8.
Sorry, what is now issue 8?
So yeah, this is a really important panel. There's a lot of good stuff in there, and if you get the comic digitally, it's worth taking a zoom and picking out.
I always hope that anybody reading this, when this scene is done, you're like, yeah, I still don't know how I feel about Countryman.
Well, after the ending of the last issue, and he's in league
cahoots
with somebody who seems pretty freaking shady, and his role was to recruit Telepath. It's hard to say. It's hard to know for sure where he stands.
So
you want to like him, you want to trust him. He seems likable and trustworthy, but at the same time, those very traits can make him feel very untrustworthy. So now we cut to Motherboard's house, which is where Telepath is living currently. And I
love how messy Motherboard's room is.
This here, panel 2, represents the only
No. There's one more.
One of two panels
Thank you.
in the entire issue that are reused from the original release.
Right.
One of only 2. So this is classic 2008 Comfort and Adam. Everything else is new.
Right.
So the major points here with this scene is that Motherboard is no fan of the government heroes.
Right.
Which is no surprise.
Neither one care for Task Force.
Neither one
and
really.
The Task Forcey things they do.
Yeah.
Also, that Telepath now just is, you know what? I feel like I want a team. It's a pretty quick change, but it's a change that she made.
Yeah, and there's ways in which you could see that maybe brewing, but there's also ways in which it's kind of fast. It's a fast turn for her. We wanted to acknowledge the change in Telepath's body from the time that she was a little girl to her sudden growth while she was out in a coma for 2 years. We talked about this in the last issue, but it's a big change. She basically went through puberty while she was asleep and woke up taller and rounder than she had been before.
Right. We like to think of Telepath as like a bullet going through space.
Yeah, a shotgun. That's Telepath. Physically,
she's thick and powerful.
Thick and powerful, exactly. She's like, and I may have said this before, so again, I'm sorry if I'm repeating a bunch of stuff, but Telepath is like Christina Hendricks if she was an MMA fighter. Round and powerful. That's what we wanted for her. So it takes adaptation. It's a big change in terms of center of gravity.
But clearly she's digging her new body.
Yeah, yeah, she can work with it. Yeah, absolutely.
She likes it. So
who wouldn't like a little extra reach?
So anyways, we're getting across the idea of a team, and a change, and what we could do. And the realities that Motherboard is talking about is that after New York, and after this huge hole that was created in leadership and also heroes, you had to take all these other young heroes and move them up into other positions.
Yeah, anybody Telepath's age who had skill, training, experience, they've all been recruited to fill the gaps. So there's not a lot left to build a new team.
So what is left? The leftovers.
The leftovers, yeah.
And that's who we're going to create
pick up with.
A team about.
And that's where we're going in the next issue.
So that's our all-new issue 2, basically.
Yeah.
All-new issue 2.
Pretty much. And this last panel, by the way, the very last panel, is the second of 2 panels that we reused.
And this issue, again, was the character issue.
Yeah.
Whereas the last one was inciting incident and plot.
Yeah.
So, yes, plot and stuff kept going through this, but really you needed that emotional connection to everybody so that the issue that comes after this really matters and plays.
So now...
Comfort's taking a pee break.
But I will continue for the interest of time. As we did previously, and as we will keep doing as we go through these
Answer some questions.
Sure. We're going to also look at the original 2008 Uniques number 1. The first issue of the original Uniques was split into the first 2 issues of the director's cut. So we talked about the first half of issue 1, the hospital escape and the New York disaster, in our previous director commentary. Now we can talk about the second half of the issue. Wainsfleet felt off about Countryman ever since you first saw him, but he seems nice. That's kind of Countryman's whole thing. He's a little off, but he seems nice. Yeah, that's him in a nutshell. And Tank, if Christina Hendricks as an MMA fighter paints a picture, that picture is Telepath. That's kind of the whole point. If she was blonde. So let's talk about the original issue. A couple things. We'll start here. So after Telepath escapes from the facility in the original, first off, she makes a complete escape and goes on the run. Motherboard, who has been scanning about this, realizes, contacts Conscience, and that's when Conscience comes back. There was much more separation and disconnect of the characters originally, and one of our big goals of the director's cut was to bring them closer together and make more of a family out of them. The introduction of Quake and Singe was much more poorly handled, frankly. It's a little too on the nose, I guess. Too cliche, too, obvious, trying too hard to be thugs kind of things. The only thing I really did like is this one shot of Singe stomping the guy that he just set on fire. I'll put you out. I'll put you out. Stop. I mean, that's a great Singe moment. That's like a definitive Singe moment. So that
really gives you a sense of that character.
Might find a way to come back later. But yeah, it was awkward. It was cheap. It wasn't very well written. So we needed a better introduction for these characters.
Right.
That wouldn't make them feel so much like Michelangelo and Gambit. Originally, Telepath flies all the way home to the Sage Estate, which we did a much better design of now.
Thank God.
And Conscience is initially angry at Hope for having been in a coma. It's like the abandonment thing, like, you left me behind.
How dare you?
How dare
blah,
you?
blah, blah, blah.
But then when she sees how hurt Hope is, she can't stay mad, and she brings him in. We ditched all of that.
Ultimately it didn't.
It
really
wasn't.
work out.
Yeah,
for the
we didn't
rest of the
have.
story.
We didn't spend the time really building it, and therefore it didn't feel like it received a good resolution. It's just
Right.
this.
I want to point out again how much damn text is in all of this here.
Yeah.
Just the
Lots.
Texapalooza, and I think oftentimes we brought the point size down farther to try and fit it all because we couldn't shut up.
Yeah, we weren't very good at managing our time.
No.
So this is where originally.
Look, it's John
guest
Tesh.
appearance by John Tesh. Yeah.
Entertainment Tonight.
Entertainment Tonight.
And this is so the TF3 scene that you saw earlier in the current
Second issue is This Was It.
Yep.
Two
And
row
it was
panel.
just a little Golden Gate thing, so we kept the Golden Gate idea and all that jazz,
Just
but we
expanded on it.
expanded on it just a little bit.
Telepath gets her haircut, and Conscience sort of explains what's been happening. It's a whole lot of just telling somebody what's going on instead of showing.
Exposition.
Lots of exposition.
And this
so
is
much.
also exposition, but a lot of stuff that's happening here to some degree, I think, happens with Motherboard and Virtue now, and so we gave that to those other characters.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good moment, but it's
nice and it's sisterly, but
it's not
because we
good
weren't
enough.
going to use Connie very much for a long time, it wasn't worth spending so much time with Connie when she just wasn't.
She's going to be a more important character as time goes forward. But in this the first 10-issue season of the story, she is tertiary. We needed the time.
Tertiary at best.
So here's where Telepath takes her mom's costume. We see Conscience's alternate, more family type form, and they say their goodbyes, and that's it for Conscience. There's no airport scene, no nothing. So we also wanted him to imply that they stayed together for more time, like it wasn't that I just saw you for the first time in 2 years and you're alive and out of your coma, and look at the time.
It's maybe been a few hours. All right,
Yeah.
I'll be seeing you.
Right. So we gave them more time.
What were we thinking?
Yeah.
All right. oh, there's that virtue scene we
Yep.
were talking about, but now
It
the
takes
old
place
version.
at like not a grave, but I guess a memorial stone
yeah.
that was erected in the backyard of their own house, which is really creepy.
Yeah. They're definitely not there because they were
Compare-
incinerated in New York.
Yeah. Compare the coloration of this
Mhm.
scene, this night scene, with, I mean, even this scene in the dark room, but I'll go back up. All right, look at this night scene. It's lighter, but it's clearly night. This is dark, but it doesn't feel like night tones, night colors. You know?
Yep.
We just weren't as effective at our coloring. Grave circumstances. Oh, thank
Oh.
you. Thank
Oh.
you. Ian,
And
is that you?
I
that
think
you,
this is Ian
I'm
here.
pretty sure that's Ian.
And I want to point out that Ian is one of the editors
Yes.
on Uniques. And so a
Ah.
lot of the story things that you might like, especially because I don't think Ian was editing the first
Oh,
run
no.
of Uniques.
No, no.
He's been editing this and he edited Rainbow in the Dark. So
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of times that you're reading stuff and you're like, that was really good. I'm glad they did that. Now, that very well could be Ian being like,
Thank
you
you,
know
Nancy.
what you shouldn't do?
Don't do that thing you're
I will
doing. Do
attribute
something else.
one thing in particular for Scout is that I'm trying to remember it now, is that Scout says when he's fighting in the next issue, issue 3, when he's fighting all those like fake ninjas in the safe room, he's like, fighting henchmen is my whole shtick, and that was Ian.
It's true.
And I was like, you know what?
That is
Because of
perfect.
Ian, I'm just gonna say that Scout and I'd always planned on this we'd always planned on this a little bit. I was like, we're gonna make it more prominent because Scout's mom has always been Jewish in our head, and we're like, yeah.
So anyway, this
That's
is largely the same kind of conversation between Virtue and Hope as what we have in the new issue. It's just not handled as well, and it takes twice as much text. Here we have the one panel of Virtue and
One
the
panel.
ruination of New York. It's the only time you see anything of the ruination of New York.
Which is just
It's
like,
it's a nice moment.
it's a
but
nice
it's not
moment.
enough.
It's also an ode to Kingdom Come,
It is.
which is the thing that got me into DC
Yeah,
Comics.
and it's one of the best. If you're gonna get into DC Comics, Kingdom Come is not a bad place to start. I also recommend Darwin Cook's New Frontier. Ding. Moving forward, she flies off. Yeah, it's largely the same scene.
I think one thing very quickly that is different that we don't touch on exactly is that Virtue points out that she is 17, but she still, for a moment, sees herself as 15.
Right.
And so 2 years has gone by. We tried to fit
But she
that
didn't
in.
experience
Yeah.
those 2 years.
She didn't experience those 2 years, and so you have a character who is, yes, this older adult, and maybe she was more mature for her age, but she's still a younger kid at the
Yeah.
same time. So she's in between ages in a really strange way.
Yeah. So next now we're starting to introduce the shadowy man in the shadowy shadows.
I just like calling him Man in Shadows,
Man in
even in the
Shadows,
scripts.
yeah.
I call
In the
him
scripts,
Man in
he's just
Shadows.
Man in Shadows, yeah.
Yep.
And his shadowy plans for shadowy doings. This scene was ported over to the director's cut of the first issue, where it's more interesting. And here's the challenge with writing mystery men in shadows with mysterious plans that aren't going to bear fruit for quite a while. It's a tough line to walk between being vague enough that it's interesting, it's exciting, you want to see what's happening, and being so vague that you can't, like, it doesn't make any sense. You know?
Right.
How
You can't, because you can't reveal anything.
Right, you
Just
can't
yet.
reveal anything. So how do you say enough that people are have
Aware
their
of the
curiosity
character.
piqued,
Right.
and yet you don't say so much that you give it away, or so little that nobody knows what's
Right,
going on.
or so much that you have to then actually act upon it. And so
Yeah.
those are always difficult things, but this is our first attempt at Man in Shadows, and this scene we place into the next issue, actually.
Oh yeah, this scene, a version of this scene goes into the next issue.
Right.
And now this is 5 panels. There's 5 panels.
Can I quick point out that this is Eric Larson, Jim Lee, and Angel Medina.
Angel Medina.
That she's fighting.
Yeah, I felt really bad about beating up those guys. They're really nice guys.
They are very nice guys. They're good guys. But
yeah.
we wanted to do, a lot of comic creators in the book. So, there you go.
So anyway, this is all we get of Telepath back in fighting form, and that's disappointing. This was an error we wanted to correct.
Right, and
if
look
you
at
get
how-
to see Telepath back in action, doing her thing again, you really need to see what she can do.
And look at all the sound effects for no
Yeah.
reason.
You don't
What
need
are we
those. You
doing?
don't need a wham elbow.
Seriously.
I mean,
A
I guess
thump.
that's a wake me up before you go elbow.
Forward, move forward.
Tank thinks that he maybe had done the flats for the Man in Shadows.
I
at
would
least
not be
once.
surprised.
Wouldn't be
Oh,
surprised.
at least once. I can guarantee it almost. There's been enough Man in Shadows that I would be
Look at how
shocked. if
high
we had.
contrast our color is on this
Ah.
page. It gets so black dark in the shadows and so bright in the highlights.
You know what? We were real proud for that time. And a lot of people were very pleased with our independent book back in the day.
I mean,
It still looks nice for independent book, but it's
Yeah,
not
but
quite
it's-
the quality we need it to be. So,
Ian saw my wham pun coming, and frankly, I'd have been disappointed if you didn't. It's right there in your face.
and here's the Countryman scene,
Yeah,
just in its old
in
version.
its old version. Shorter, not nearly as much personality. This, in the original issue, was the first time we meet Countryman.
Yep.
So he comes out of nowhere.
It's just
with
like a
the
guy.
Join the task force. He
Well
just shows
done.
up.
And you're like, okay.
Hi, I'm Countryman. Join
I'm
my
Countryman.
team.
I guess you're kind of like Captain America. All right.
Now
Whatever.
there's still the same relationship between the two characters. That didn't change, but our presentation of the relationship has gotten much more nuanced. Jinx.
Uh-huh.
It's almost like we write these things
Oh
together.
my god.
Yeah, we're presenting it in a more multidimensional and I guess friendly way. They feel more friendly.
They do feel more friendly, less forced.
And
We were
this-
trying for moments, not scenes.
This is the telepathic read my mind moment. Compare this guy here with this guy down here. I'm going. It's getting there. It's a lot of pages
Oh
down.
my god.
Here, there it is. This panel. This panel. Huh. Yeah.
This is again, it's why we had to read
There were, when we first set out to do the director commentary, there were a handful of moments that we immediately homed in on as we've got to do this thing, we've got to do that thing, we've got to do that. The things we were really looking forward to getting to do better and expanding on, this moment was one
This
of those.
issue, I would say, like by the time we were doing halfway through and we'd finish issue 6, I think we both knew that we were going to go back someday and redo issue 1 at the very least. And so at that point in time, in my mind, I started saying, well, what could we do? And this was one of the first ones I thought. Yeah.
Sam points out that Countryman's proportions are a lot better now because they used to be just very traditionally super heroic and kind of bland, and the new one looks younger, and that was intentional.
Yep.
In general, we are focusing on making the bodies more distinct for all the characters. If you look at Telepath, she's sort of just traditional superhero lady.
I would say generic is what they look like.
Pretty generic.
And
Yeah, we were trying to make her a thicker, stronger body type. We just weren't good at
we
doing
didn't have
that.
the skill to do
We
it.
didn't have the skill, and we weren't able to push ourselves far enough. So a lot of our proportions just weren't as distinct.
What are you going to do? We were 26.
Yeah, we were learning. You know, this was the biggest project we'd taken on. We'd done some comics before, but single issue things, pitch books, proposal books, nothing on this scale.
And nothing that we had written ourselves.
Yes, also true.
Yeah.
Tank still enjoys the telepathy effect, and we do definitely use that halo
We do
stick.
try and bring it back.
Yep, that is still the halo that Telepath gets when
It's
she activates.
an ode to Art Nouveau.
And you can actually
See a little bit of
see a
that.
little of it. Maybe not right here because we're doing that big thing, but there are other places where you see it. It does come back.
She did it in issue 1.
Yes, she did.
When she was reading the guy's mind.
Yeah, wow.
And he was like, no!
Yeah.
And she was breaking her own moral code.
Yeah.
But she was desperate. So.
She was well, and she was panicked and freaked the hell out. And one minute she's passing out on an airplane and her parents are dying in her brain, and the next minute she's sitting in a hospital bed with tubes and stuff plugged in all over the place.
Different person.
Her body's weird and different. Her hair is weird. I mean, she freaked out.
So.
I think most of us would have a moment of freaking out if that happened.
Too bad she's got powers.
Now back we go. Here's that panel again. And we can actually, because there's just the 2 panels, we can actually come in and compare. Take a look at this here. And take a look at this there. Notice the color, the quality of color here.
And
has
also
changed.
fading out those posters.
Fading out the posters a little more, so they're not quite so prominent and distracting. Adjusting the tone on the bodies so that it's
and
not quite so
also
stark and high contrast.
thickening up telepathy
Thickening
just
her up
a little bit.
there, yeah. I could have done more, but you know.
It's a tiny panel.
It's a tiny panel. It's not.
It's a tiny panel,
Yeah.
and we were like, "It's good enough."
I mean, you got her here. You know what the girl looks
Sure.
like. Tank claims that she's not as buxom as Christina Hendricks would be. I argue that she's tamping them down because she's in high action situations. You want the girls under control.
Word life.
You can't just have them all over the place.
It can't be
smacking
a dead or
yourself in the
alive
face.
beach volleyball.
Right? Right? She's not a Yane running around kicking people, changing her stance back and forth.
All right.
Sorry, Adam played Dead or Alive.
Never
Adam
played.
played Dead or Alive. That was a good
I
fight.
do like that.
People get distracted by the boobs, but it's a quality fighting game.
Quality.
All
right.
Yeah. So this is
Basically,
very
same
similar
gist,
scene.
but more interesting, and again, that word, nuance. And that's what we had in the new version, and that's the thing that I think made this scene sing in a way that it didn't before. And even though there are fewer panels here, I think overall there's fewer words in the new one because we're cutting down the amount that's being said.
Yeah, and partly because we're covering some of this information elsewhere too. Something else we would do a lot in our early issues is we would repeat ourselves a lot, scene to scene, saying similar things over and over again. And that we've gotten better. You know, say it once, lay the idea out, and then the audience gets it.
But even Ian can attest that there are times where we do that, and he's like, "You've already said that." And so that's the other thing is
We've
we
got
have
better
editors
editors.
who's going to be like, "Hey,
Yeah.
you know what? You can make this better," and
Yeah.
we're like, "Yeah, we could." So there you go. That's the original.
That's the original first issue of the Uniques.
Look, we even had
With
a little
our
message
original
from
little
us. How
message
cute!
from us. Aw,
How
we're
adorable!
so adorable.
Oh, we're so little. We actually think there might be a letter column.
Yeah, I know.
Little did we know that everything was just going to be
Yeah.
done online at that point,
Yeah.
and everything had changed over. Wow. So.
Yeah, and we go out on the same panel.
Okay.
Although Telepath is buffer.
Yep. And the colors are
Contrast
way
is
better.
way better. Oh my god.
So thank you all for showing up.
Yes, thank you for joining
And-
us for our second commentary. Our third commentary is going to come much faster. We waited a lot longer than
I'd
we
like
wanted
to
for this
think
one.
we should do it before C2E2, or
Yeah.
we should do at least one for Rainbow before C2E2.
Sure.
One
Yeah, because
or
we've got
the
that,
other.
the entirety of Rainbow in the Dark to
Oh,
talk about
yeah.
too, and that's a lot of fun to talk about. You want to talk about some visual metaphor and stuff going on. That's a good book. So yeah, this is Unique's number 2 director's cut. The book that we always wanted it to be. This was a really proud moment, I think, this issue as a whole.
Yeah,
getting
because
this
it
done.
really was giving us, I think, a sense of where we were actually going to go.
and
in the series.
delivering a lot on many of the promises that we were trying to make with the original series. This is the best definition of what the director's cut is supposed to be. Taking a lot of the scenes that we had done before, but really
reworking
doing
them
them.
in a way that they really felt
Yeah.
authentic and interesting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Delivering on the promises made and the potential of the story that we were making.
I think we have talked long enough and
Yes, we
held these
have.
people who've been kind enough to be here with us this whole time. Thank you so much, you guys.
Yeah. And we thank you for all your interaction in the chat.
Yep.
It's been fun. And we'll let you know when the next one's coming, but it's going to be coming in the next few weeks. So keep paying attention. You can throw us a follow on Twitch, and it'll
Right.
alert you when we go on. We do Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday nights.
Yep.
You can check out our website, comfortandatom.com, for
And
all things Comfort and Adam.
all the social media that you may want to follow us on is right there.
Bingo, bango,
Yep.
boffo. So please do come see us. We'd love to see you again. And thank you all for your time.
Thank you guys so much. I waved goodbye to
To-
the.
wait, I'm
I
not-
wave goodbye
Bye.
to the screen. Bye, bye, comments. You were great. You guys, well done. Yay.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.